Europe tends to be one of the first places people think of going when they start a sabbatical or longer term travel, at least if you're from the States. You may have heard of the Schengen zone, but if you're going to live this lifestyle and you plan to go to Europe for a while, you need to know how Schengen impacts your travels. Let's discuss it on today's episode of How to Travel Full-Time. Welcome to the How to Travel Full-Time podcast. I'm your host, Heather Markell. If you're dreaming of full-time travel or moving abroad, but stuck at the emotional, financial, and logistical challenges, this podcast is for you. I'll help you trade overwhelm for information that gets you from down and stuck to up and going. You can dream about the travel lifestyle, or you can live the travel lifestyle. If you're ready to live it, then let's jump in together. Welcome back. So let's talk the Schengen zone today. What exactly is it? You can consider the Schengen zone a grouping of countries that use the same currency and pull together for economic and political reasons. I look at it like this. In the United States, we pooled together states. The European Union pooled together countries. The Schengen Agreement was signed in 1985 by 5 members. Since then, border controls have been dropped, and one common visa serves to enter all of the member nations. In 1995, the Schengen area was established. As of this recording, there are 29 member states, or countries, but only 25 are members of the Schengen area. You need to keep up with the countries that are part of the Schengen area because almost every year a new member joins, like Croatia did in 2023. The reason this is important, for Americans especially who want to go to Europe, is all about the visa. Most visas we get when we travel abroad, whether they're free or paid, are for one country. A Schengen visa, however, gets us access to almost 30 countries. So one visa, 30 countries. That may sound great, but the thing is, that visa is for a limited time, typically 90 days. So as of this recording, while the visa is free upon arrival, meaning you don't need to apply or pay for anything, you do need to keep your eyes peeled on something called the ETIAS visa. I'll put a link to that in the show description notes because that promises to have us paying for our Schengen visa in future. So again, we're talking about the importance of you've got one, if you have a visa and you're going to say Vietnam, and that's the only country you're going to, and you're going to spend the entire 60 days or whatever you have allotted to you, great. But now imagine if you had a visa that, you can go all over Europe, but you only have 90 days. So it's like a limited time to go a lot of places. And one thing I do not advise is ever overstaying a visa. You could be blacklisted from multiple countries 4 years or forever. Just don't do it. The only time I thought about overstaying was when I was in New Zealand during COVID. I learned if I had chosen to overstay, I would be blacklisted from entering not just New Zealand, and I think it was for at least 7 years, but also due to reciprocity with other nations, I would have been banned from Australia and the United Kingdom as well. Of course, I was lucky they extended my visa, but it is serious stuff if you overstay. That's why, if you're thinking of traveling through Europe for months at a time, you have the unique circumstance of having to track exactly how many days that you have accumulated in the entire Schengen region, right? So it's not just tracking how long you were in Paris, it's how long you were in any one of those member countries that comprise the Schengen region. So full-time travelers refer to this task as the Schengen Shuffle. So you're allowed, Americans anyway, 90 days within 180 days, right? So you can be in Schengen countries 90 days within 180. So if you have a rolling 180, you can see how this is going to get really complicated, okay? So this is a complex thing. So if you go in and out of the Schengen area within 180 days, you need to carefully track exactly how many days you stayed in countries that are part of the Schengen area. So for example, if you spend a month in France, and then you hop over to Spain for 2 weeks, and then you spend a month in Italy, you'd have used up 2.5 months, or roughly 75 days of the 90 you're allowed. The one time I stayed in the Schengen region for over 80 days, and this has never happened to me before this, I was transiting back to the US through the Charles de Gaulle airport in Paris, and the immigration officer there, I mean, usually it's like they take my passport and they're like, okay, have a nice trip. This one, the officer quizzed me a lot, and he was, oh my God, he was flipping through my passport with such focus and attention. It was kind of scary. And he reviewed my passport and asked me those questions to make sure that I had not overstayed, and I had to tell him what I had done, and he then flipped through the passport to back up what I was saying and make sure I was telling the truth, right? So this is serious stuff, and you do not want to get it wrong. Now, happily, there are a few apps that offer a Schengen calculator. So whether you have an Android or an iPhone, I suggest you go to your relative app store, or was it the Google Play Store if you're on an Android, and just type in Schengen calculator. You should find something. And if not, you can try Googling that term. And if you can't spell it, by the way, look at the title of this podcast episode, and you should be able to find something. So what most people do who want to spend, say, 6 months or a year in Europe is to figure out where they can go for the other 90 days of that 180 period and shuffle back and forth. For example, the United Kingdom is not part of the Schengen zone, and you can spend 90 days there, and then you can go back into Schengen. Not every country in the Balkans is part of the Schengen area either. So that's another place you can travel. But now you get into needing other visas that, potentially for these other countries. For example, if you weren't aware, you now need a visa to get into the United Kingdom. Again, at least as an American. Side note, I was just with a friend this week who was flying off to the United Kingdom, and we met up the day she was leaving. And it was also the same day she learned she needed that new UK visa. So thankfully she brought it up, and was I aware that this visa was needed? And so I sent her the URL to use to get it. And in about 10 minutes, she had it taken care of. Now, the website to get this UK visa says it can take up to 3 days. So it's best if you apply online in advance. Actually, on their website, there's an app that you can put on your phone. You can apply, and you have to pay for it. It's about $12, at least as of this podcast episode. And you can do all of that in the app. I got mine in less than 30 minutes, but just make sure you apply for it before you go to the airport, because they do check at the airport that you do have this visa before you can take off. So, if you plan on spending a significant amount of time in any or several of the Schengen countries, because again, you can spend all 90 in one country, or you can country hop all throughout the Schengen, and then it gets, like I said, really complicated. Maybe you want to spend like a month in France, and then you go to the UK for a month, and then you go to Spain for a month, and then it can get really, really complicated. And that's why we're really thankful that there are calculators and smart people out there who can help us track our time there. But basically, if you are planning to spend that time in any or several of the Schengen countries as part of your full-time travel experience, here's what you'll want to do. First, check out the current list of Schengen countries. And again, I'll put the URL in the description field of today's episode. 2, look into and choose several countries that are outside of the Schengen zone where you can go in between your Schengen stays. And again, you really have to be careful because new countries that are applying might be mid-application, and they may be, depending on how long you're traveling, it could be that, especially if you're going over the course of like December, January, it could be that in November, the country that you were like, for example, in before Croatia joined, it could be that you're like, oh great, it's 2022, Croatia's not part of the EU, cool. And then you go there in January and oops, now it is. So this is why you got to pay really close attention to which countries are applying and where they are in their application process. 3, download the Schengen calculator I recommended in the App Store relative to your phone. You can also Google it and triple check your dates so you don't overstay. And finally, number 4, research visa requirements for countries you're traveling to as part of your shuffle in and out of the Schengen zone. So I know it's a little complicated, but this is some important information for you to know if you are planning to travel full-time and want to spend the luxurious time in Europe that we all love to do. I hope you found this episode helpful, and if you ever have any questions, feel free to come check out my website at heatherbegins.com for more information. Have a great week. Thanks so much for listening to the How to Travel Full-Time podcast. If you loved it, please leave a review and let us know. Make sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes. Check out the show notes for important resources related to this episode, and come visit us at travellifestylecoach.com to learn more great information. If you're ready to get started with the lifestyle, go to moneyfortravelbootcamp.com, where you can learn all the strategies to afford this amazing lifestyle. Talk to you next week.